Welcome, 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 everybody to Signal Live, powered by State of the People TV. We want to thank you for tuning in to the Pulse of the People. I'm Ed Gordon, and that is Jacque Reid. Hey,
The
Jack.
one and only. Hey, Ed Gordon. Good to be reunited.
It really is so good to be here. We're excited about what we have for you tonight, and it's a little bit of a BET reunion, if you will. We've got some great guests coming on with us. Keisha Lance Bottoms, many of you remember her as the mayor of Atlanta, GA. Well, that wasn't enough for her. She's going to run for the governor's mansion. In fact, she is running for the governor's mansion and ahead in the polls. Shh, don't tell anybody.
Yeah, the
We'll
polls
get
are
to
in
her
her favor.
in just a minute. D.L. Hughley will be with us, one of the funniest men we have seen to hit the stage. And he's also been a social commentator for many, many years. We're going to talk about something that's very near and dear to Jacque Reid's heart, and that is health and wellness, particularly as the holiday season is upon us. And then, of course, we're going to talk about our years at BET and the current state of Black media. Again, the show is brought to you by State of the People TV. You're tuning in to the Pulse of the People. Please like and comment and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to do that.
Yeah, please. Because we Well, I was going to say that they do this. We do this show. Signal Live is here, brought to you live here on YouTube every Thursday. We are guest co-hosting today, but every Thursday, please tune in and support this effort because they are bringing information to the people that is much needed. So you ready to get into the show, Ed?
We indeed are. You got the first introduction up, Jack.
I definitely do. You mentioned that Keisha Lance Bottoms is our top guest for today. Now, she, as you mentioned, was the mayor of Atlanta. She was the second woman to become mayor of Atlanta. In the process, she became a household name. How many times have you heard people from Atlanta say, my mayor's name is Keisha? Now, she also served as a senior advisor to President Joe Biden, and now she is running for governor of Georgia. She is a FAMU alum, shout out to HBCU grads, and a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. We love her for that. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, Keisha Lance Bottoms. Hey, we need like music to play her on to the stage.
Well, we probably need her first, but there we go.
That's music that plays while you come on.
I love the BET News, but Ed, I tuned in every night just to see Jackie's hair and what she had on.
I'll accept it. I'll accept it.
She said that because she's my soror too. We love Welcome, Keisha Lance Bottoms. Okay, we want to get right to it because both of us have so many questions for you. And congratulations for throwing your hat into the ring for governor of Georgia. Now, let's talk about this ongoing debate. It's not a huge one, but it's something that you hear often. And that is, you know, when there's a Black politician, people will say, well, they didn't do enough for Black people. It was a complaint about Barack Obama. But I feel like when you were mayor of Atlanta, you found that special balance of representing everybody, but also touching, you know, the constituents that were Black Americans. As you gear up running for governor, how will you do the same statewide?
Well, first of all, again, thank you all for having me. And this is such an important conversation, and telling our stories, as you all know, is more important than ever. So for me, Jackie, some of the best political advice I ever received was the first time I ran for office. And someone said to me, no matter what decision you make, always be sure that you can go home. And for me, that meant that I could walk back into my church. I could walk into the grocery store. I could show up at the basketball game, at the rec center, and I could hold my head high. And that was always just a North Star for me in just how I delivered for people. you all know Atlanta, in so many ways, is just this anchor in who we are as African Americans. And I've just always believed that when you do right by one community, you do right by us all. And that's just always been how I've tried to govern. There were some people who would say, that I leaned in too much for communities of color. And, obviously there's some who might disagree, but I'm really proud of how we delivered. And I think that when all of our communities are strong, then we're all better for it. And that's what I'm taking with me as I seek to become the governor of this great state.
Yeah.
I want to stay in that lane if I can, and talk about the idea of that balance that you've got to strike, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're up, no matter where you are, when you're a Black candidate, statewide office can be challenging. Let's just be honest about it. It's a lot of white folk out there that don't come in contact with anybody Black. They're not really sure you're from the big city, et cetera, et cetera. Just as you said, though, you got to take care of home as well. When you think about what you'll need to do, what do you know? I remember asking Nelson Mandela when he first got out and he was taking over the presidency. I said, what's the most important thing that you've got to tell people? He said, I've got to tell white people I won't treat them the way they treated me. And I've got to tell Black people that the day I get in office, your life will not change.
Mm-hmm.
What's your message, that balanced message?
Well, one of my favorite quotes, it always seems impossible until it's done. And for me, that means as a person who can trace their lineage 5 generations back in this state, it's only as far back as we can trace it, just to a plantation in Crawfordsville, Georgia. I am keenly aware of that delicate balance that has to be struck. And again, it sounds like a cliche, but when you deliver for communities, when you're providing housing with dignity, when you are providing jobs, when you're providing opportunities, when you're working to make sure that our kids can go to quality schools, that lifts all of us up together. And as my mother often says to me, you only have to tell the truth once. And especially in this age of social media, and there's always a camera, and when you're running for office, you better assume, even if you don't see a camera, that somebody is there recording you. Yeah. I can't have one message for one community and another message for a different community. I'll stand before anybody and say what my priorities are. And when I had the opportunity to serve as mayor, that meant doing what we often refer to as marrying this commerce with compassion. I did lots of things that were great for businesses in our community. Georgia's home to roughly 18 Fortune 500 companies. So there were things that we did that were great for big businesses, but there were also things that we did that were great for mom and pop businesses. When we closed the largest real estate transaction in the history of the Southeastern United States. If you've ever been to Atlanta near the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, you see all the development that's going on. That was a transaction that we closed, this multi-million-dollar transaction. But with that, we were able to get $28 million for an affordable housing trust fund to help offset rising property taxes. We were able to put a couple of $1 million into a child savings account for kindergartners across the city. We were able to put a few million into a technical training program at Atlanta Technical College to help get people trained for jobs. We were able to carve out a minority equity piece in this project, not minority participation, but an equity piece in this project. And the list goes on, and it's what Ambassador Andrew Young often refers to as the Atlanta way, how you are able to bring commerce, businesses, philanthropic entities, government, faith leaders all to the table, and then you get it done for the good of all.
Yeah. So I know you don't like labels when it comes to the type of Democrat that you are, not moderate, not progressive, you're a Democrat, but let me speak as someone who is thinking about leaving the Democratic Party, myself personally. And I love you, so this is not about you. But I have had it with the Democrats in Washington when it comes to taking AIPAC money and the over support of Israel, kikiing with Donald Trump, after telling the world how dangerous he is, and then welcoming him into the White House, saying, welcome home. No answer for Project 2025, caving in on the shutdown. And now today, the vote that was promised on healthcare subsidies, that failed twice. What do you say to people like me that are frustrated with the Democratic Party, with Democrats that are in office, and in my words, the lack of fight against Donald Trump, the lack of pushback?
Well, Jackie, what I would say, there are a lot of people who are feeling not included and not thought about in any sector. And and especially in a place like Georgia, I think the great thing about how elections work in Georgia, you don't have to register as a Democrat or a Republican or an independent. We have open primaries in this state. And increasingly, there are people in the Democratic Party, a lot of people, African Americans, who are a core group in the party, who are saying, I don't want a specific label. That there's some things that I'm more conservative on, some things I'm more moderate on. So I don't think you are alone in that. But I would just remind you that it's our democracy too. And I know that you know that.
Yeah.
And I don't care what you call yourself. I just want people to show up and vote.
Yeah.
And I believe that when you vote for good policies and when you vote for people and not look for perfection, because none of us are perfect. We're not going to agree on everything. That would be pretty boring if we did, but we're still going to come together for the common good. Then I believe people like you who don't subscribe to a label will hopefully still find me as the best candidate at this time.
Let me piggyback off that and get you to talk about the importance of the power of governors. We have seen that over the course of this last couple of years. I think about my buddy Wes Moore and the fight that he has put up directly face to face with Donald Trump. Is that something that you had to ponder as you thought about getting in the race? That's an added burden, let's be honest, but you're going to have to at times fight that federal government. Talk to us about how you'll want to do that.
Yeah. And then, I'm a battle tested leader. I had to fight Donald Trump for the 3 years he was president while I was mayor of Atlanta. And at that time, we couldn't even look to our governor's mansion for some sound leadership. So nobody wants to sign up to have to fight with the president of the United States. But, I think about when I was a kid and you were on the playground, you say, I don't start fights, but I'm going to finish them. And that's been my approach with him. I'm going to always fight for the people who I love. And for me as mayor, that included Atlanta. And it will be the same for the state of Georgia. So, I'm not afraid. Bullies don't scare me.
Yeah. And he is definitely a bully. And now, Ed, I'm going to piggyback on what you were talking about. And that is fighting Trump, because here in Atlanta, there are all these texts going around about ICE.
Yeah.
What's your plan to deal with that? Because, you're going to, if you win, it'll be in the middle of Donald Trump's term. And ICE is just getting more funding, and it seems to just be getting stronger and stronger and more out of control. What's the plan for the state of Georgia to deal with that?
So, and I'll just go back just 1 second, Ed, on the question about the power of governors. The governor in Georgia is one of the most powerful governors in the country, because the governor of Georgia has the authority of the pen, line item vetoes, which gives the governor an enormous amount of power. ICE, when I was mayor of Atlanta, we had a multi-million-dollar contract at our city jail with ICE that we would house people who had been detained by ICE. When Donald Trump started separating families at the border, I asked the question, are we going to be a party to housing people who've been separated from their children, or even housing children. Nobody could tell me that we were not. I ended that contract because all money ain't good money.
Right.
And in ending that contract, that created a ripple effect across the country that other people ended their contracts as well. So it will be the same, it's going to be the same approach in dealing with ICE now. If it's not good for the people of Georgia, and again, we want hardened criminals off of our streets, whether they are legally here or not, whether they are citizens or not. Nobody wants violent criminals on the street. That's a completely separate category than what we are seeing happening with ICE in Chicago, detaining a woman going to her job in a daycare center, where people are showing up for these routine hearings. People who've been in this country since they were 5 years old, and they are being detained and deported. We're dealing with a different set of circumstances here, and we'll have to make decisions accordingly in how our law enforcement works or doesn't work with ICE in detaining people. I have grave concerns about law enforcement working alongside ICE, because you then discourage communities who are often vulnerable from calling law enforcement. So if someone is being abused by their spouse, they are then afraid to call law enforcement because they may show up with ICE. So there are a lot of circumstances that just creates a very dangerous situation. And as governor of the state, we're going to have to take a deep dive on what our coordination is and what the parameters needs to be around that coordination.
Yeah, because Chicago is the perfect example, in the city of Chicago. But even if a state is considered blue, right, with a Democratic governor, it seems like in LA, in Chicago, in these cities, ICE still seems to be making their way and moving without anyone stopping them.
And the other thing, even I'm sorry, as challenging as it is to even recruit and retain law enforcement, ICE is now running ads. They are throughout Georgia, offering $50,000 bonuses to law enforcement. They are poaching officers from departments that are already strapped for personnel. So in many ways, they just haven't been the best partners in many ways.
Let me ask you this as relates to the Black vote, not just in Georgia. Obviously, it's going to, quite frankly, be the win or loss for you, probably the turnout in Atlanta and the immediate surrounding areas, but also for midterms. I do not see Black folk being excited about midterms yet. I speak with a lot of politicians. Just left Joyce Beatty in Ohio, CBC members, just with Representative Clyburn, had some meetings and discussions about really kind of ramping it up. And it goes back to Jackie's point. Too many people feel like it doesn't matter who's in office, Democrat or Republican. My life ain't changing. If it's good, it'll probably remain good. But if it ain't, it ain't. Talk to us about the importance of the Black vote and what you need to tell politicians has to be the give back.
Yeah. So, my congressman was John Lewis, and he said the vote is the most powerful weapon that we have in a democracy. If we don't use it, we will lose it. And what I saw coming out of November, I felt this rather despondent energy going into the spring. Over the summer, I started to feel that shift, that people are engaging again politically, and they're saying, how can I push back? How can I fight back? I am encouraged by the elections we just saw in Miami, with the Democratic mayor being elected for the first time in 20 years, Virginia, New Jersey, a state house seat right here in Athens, Georgia, that hadn't flipped for a Democrat in decades, wasn't expected to flip this time, went for a Democrat. 2 public service commissioners in the state. So people are talking about the affordability issue. That's a big issue. They want to elect people who actually believe that affordability is not a hoax. And I think it is incumbent upon us as people who are seeking to hold office to believe people when they tell us what they care about. So if they're saying I care about my utility bill, I care about my grocery bill, I'm concerned about affordable housing, then we ought to listen and not tell them what they should be thinking about. And I think we are finally, I hope, tuning in, and that's going to be important not just for local and statewide elections, but it's going to be important for those congressional elections. In Georgia, John Ossoff will be back on the ballot. We have 2 Democratic senators in the state. He'll be on the ballot in 2026 too. And I believe we finally gotten that message. You know, I always say my mantra in campaigning, the streets don't lie. You can find out what people care about. So when I was getting my hair braided last summer before last, just before the election, and the woman told me that Donald Trump wasn't that bad because he sent her a check with his name on it. You know, I had to not clutch my pearls, but I had to believe that she believed that's what he did. And that's how we've got to listen and be thoughtful about what people are saying, what they care about, and then how do we address those issues as people seeking their votes.
Well, I want to stay on the topic of affordability. I'm the daughter of a retired teacher from DeKalb County who's a member of GAE. And, you know, and I love that one of the things that you want to do is eliminate state tax for our teachers.
Yes.
Because a lot of people are hurting right now, but teachers, you know, a lot of them are quitting. You know, it's an all-time low of people going into this profession because of the pay, the amount of work that they have to do for the money that they make and the lack of support that they get. Do you think that, you know, how much pushback have you gotten from that idea of eliminating income tax for teachers?
I can say that is the one issue that I've not gotten any pushback on.
Really?
The only question I've had is why can't we expand that? What about the counselors, the bus drivers, the people who work in the cafeteria? And my answer has been, we are approaching this in a responsible way. Our teachers are the beginning, but not the end. I know that the state of Georgia's budget can absorb cutting state income taxes for our teachers. And then we will move from there as we can absorb others into that. But it's a way to address this affordability issue because our teachers really are doing God's work. They're going into their pockets, having to pay for supplies. They're having to pay to be retrained and certified in other areas within the school system. I was talking with a teacher in Columbus, Georgia, who moved into another role at her school. She had to pay $14,000 to be certified to move into this other role that she was needed in. So it's not enough to address all of the needs, but it's a small step in getting us there to at least show our teachers that we appreciate what they're doing. And we've got a shortage in this state.
Shout out to Columbus. I used to go down every summer. My uncle was in the military down there in Fort Benning. So shout out to Columbus. Let me ask you this as relates to, it's easy for voters to sit back and complain. And quite frankly, in many cases, they have every right. But I remind people, too often we feel like our last day involved in politics is the day we vote. I tell them that really should be day one, particularly if your candidate gets in office. Can you give our viewers a sense of empowerment and what they can do over and beyond just voting?
Yeah, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So when you send that email, when you leave that message, even when you walk up to an elected official in the mall and you ask them a question or have you thought about doing XYZ, it matters. There's a limited capacity in government of resources, oftentimes bandwidth to be creative. Some of our best ideas come in partnership with other people or ideas that are coming from people who say, have you thought about doing it this way? Or have you, and I'll give you an example. When I launched, I had a list of priorities. Jackie mentioned one: eliminating state income taxes for teachers, expanding Medicaid in our state, tackling affordable housing, addressing education through expanding some programs, support for small businesses. As I've been on the ground, we were at Albany State University. I heard repeatedly questions from students about mental health access to resources for mental health for them and for their families. I've heard repeatedly questions about support for caregivers, people who are caring for aging parents, people in that sandwich generation. So there are things that we think of priorities, but when we're moving around and talking to people on the ground and they are bringing these topics up, then it helps us shift our priorities because we know what's needed. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. Voting is just a part of the process. Being involved, staying involved is as important as it is to show up and vote.
And I also think I want to just piggyback on that because I think it's important, and please weigh in on this, Keisha, for people to also, beyond voting, going to even PTA meetings, city council meetings, all of those things and being heard. A lot of us don't do that, you know.
And not just when you want to go and yell at somebody. I
Yeah.
remember during COVID, one of my neighbors every few weeks would leave a card in my mailbox just to tell me that she was thinking of me and to encourage me. When I was a member of city council, I kept all of the cards and thank you notes that I would get because they would inspire me to keep going, because you often feel as an elected official that nobody likes you, the walls are closing in, you can't please anybody, but it's those reminders that people care and they support you and they see what you're doing on their behalf.
Yeah, yeah. I want to ask you quickly that about the CDC, because I have so many classmates. I grew up here, and friends who lost jobs. Some of them were asked to come back, but then there's also the problem of so many medical officials leaving. I mean, the relationship between Georgia and the CDC, specifically Atlanta, has been long standing. Are you concerned at all about the future of the CDC because of that relationship in Georgia? Not just the information that we're not getting anymore from this federal agency, but how concerned are you about the future of the CDC in Atlanta?
So I've received the endorsement of AFGE, which is the union that represents federal employees, including CDC employees. I am deeply troubled. Over 3,000 employees in DeKalb County have been laid off from the CDC, and I had a roundtable with several of them. And what struck me in the room, they were primarily women, and the vast majority were women of color. And I had to ask the question, this is an interesting visual here. Tell me why are there women and mostly women of color in this room? And what they said to me is that the first round of fires, they seem to have targeted departments that were made up of women and women of color specifically, and programs that were geared toward underserved communities. So it is deeply troubling. I was watching a morning news show on one of the major networks, and a former head of the CDC said They were talking about the hepatitis vaccine for babies, and he said, "I can't believe I'm saying this, but don't go to the CDC as your trusted information source.
Yeah.
Talk with your doctor, talk with someone who can offer you sound advice." And essentially, he said, right now, it's not the CDC. That is something that we should all be deeply troubled by
Yeah.
as a generation of people who grew up with vaccines, healthy and whole. I am troubled.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me
Well,
let me ask you
go
very
ahead.
quick, as we are over time, so we're going to
Yeah.
let you go in just a second. But let me ask you this last question. We should note, though early, you are ahead in the polls, but
Yes.
it's too early to be dancing about that. Give our viewers an idea of how they can be helpful to your campaign. Obviously, those in Georgia can vote, but it's winning elections statewide is much larger than just the border of that state. What do you want from folks?
Yeah. So I'm very thankful to be at 40% in the polls, but you need 50% plus one to win. There are two things, well, not two, there are probably three things I need. Prayer is always appreciated. Secondly, resources. And I was thinking of this today. Over all my platforms, I probably have just right at 1 million followers. If I could get just, a fourth of the people to send $1, that
Yeah.
could be a game changer for this campaign, because campaigns are expensive. We're anticipating over $50 million that we will need in the primary. And then just lastly, even if you're not in Georgia, everybody knows somebody in Georgia. Call your cousins, social media posts, weighing in when people aren't telling the truth on social media goes a very long way. And you can also sign up to volunteer. Keisha for Governor, that's KEISHA, the right way to spell Keisha for Governor.com. You can sign up to volunteer, and we'll be sending call sheets and giving people, even who are out of state, an opportunity to get involved.
And I know Ed said last question, but I do have to ask you about this because I know you have season tickets and you don't have to wait until you become governor. What are we going to do about these Falcons?
You know what? We're going to keep loving the Falcons. As we always love the Falcons my whole life.
I'm not letting this go on. This is crazy.
Come on, Detroit.
We're going to keep hope alive. The next year is going to be better. And then I do want to mention, I've received the endorsement of Emily's List, which is a huge national endorsement. So I need all of us to get involved. And we love the Falcons.
We definitely do. It's going to change one day. It's going to change for the better. All right. Keisha Lance Bottoms, thank you so much for making time to join us this evening. And congratulations on your candidacy and good luck.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, Jackie, we're going to move on. And I'm going to let you do this intro because over the years, I've gotten to know that health and wellness for you is front line. You have spent a lot of time getting those of us who maybe don't put it as high on our list as we should. Look, she works on me sometimes, y'all. I ain't lying. But
your work in progress.
As we move to the holiday season, it really is important to deal with our mental and physical health.
It really, really is. I mean, now more than ever, people are dealing with depression and sadness and loneliness. And that's why we have invited Dr. Joy Harden Bradford for Therapy for Black Girls on to talk with us about this very thing and really give folks some advice and some encouragement on how to get through this holiday season. Welcome, Dr. Joy. Uh-oh, I think you might be muted. Are you muted, Dr. Joy? Yeah, you are. Okay. So welcome. Let's try that again. Uh-oh, and now she's frozen. Okay, can you hear me?
Dr. Joy, can you hear us?
Can you hear us? Can you hear us?
All right, Dr. Joy, wait a minute.
Hear you.
Sorry.
But we can't hear you. Try to say something one more time. Okay, let's put her backstage, you guys, and y'all work that out and pop her back in when the audio is worked out. But yes, I'm gonna stay on your case when it comes to wellness.
Now's a good time for you to tell the folks what will be happening first of the year for you as relates to this.
Well, thank you, Ed Gordon. That's so perfect. What a great segue. Yes, starting the first of the year in January, I'm going to be launching the Jacque Reid Experience, which is a wellness show. People who have been following me know, as you mentioned, Ed, I'm very much into wellness, and I'm always encouraging people in my orbit to just try to live better. Of course, I want everybody to eat better, vegan if you can do it, but you don't have to do that. This show will focus on not just, wellness and what we can do, moving our bodies, eating better, but it will also focus on patient advocacy, what we need to be doing when we go to the doctor's office, the conversations we need to be having, and the tests that we need to have beyond the typical tests that we have annually. What other tests do we need to have, particularly women who are menopausal? We're going to spend a lot of time on that. So that'll be starting in January on YouTube. If you follow the Jacque Reid Experience on YouTube, you can find out all about it.
And we should talk about the idea that
And now Ed's gone. Oh boy. Okay. So while we try to get Ed back, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Jacque Reid Experience. So if you go to the Jacque Reid Experience on YouTube, the show will be starting on January the 5th. That is a Monday. And I'll be going live at noon every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with special guests. And so we will be on this journey together. I have been into wellness for a long time, but there's still things that I need to learn and goals that I am trying to meet. So I'm going to make 2026 my year of wellness. So come on this ride with me. It's important, particularly in the Black community. We really work hard. We grind. If I hear one more person say they're going to, sleep when they die, I can't have it. We need to be getting the adequate rest, because just as we talked with Keisha Lance Bottoms, about what's going on in this country politically, that takes a toll on you, even if you're not involved in politics. Okay, we're working on getting Dr. Joy back. So I want you all to join me. Like I said, starting in January on the Jacque Reid Experience. And let me also plug Read This, Read That, my podcast with Joy Reid while I am here. I'm gonna get it all in. Dr. Joy and Ed are back. Dr. Joy,
and let me just say, Doctor, before you jump on, I know you all heard the call coming in. That was D.L. Hughley calling me instead of the link. He'll be with us in just a few minutes. All right.
Dr. Joy, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me, Jackie?
Yes, there she is.
Beautiful.
And it is the voice that I love. If y'all do anything, follow this woman. She does an amazing podcast, Therapy for Black Girls. It is incredible. Great advice. She has great experts on there. But let's talk about the topic at hand. It is the holiday season, and so many people are dealing with depression, sadness, family drama, caused by family drama. A lot of people are ending this year out of work. They're struggling financially. We got all these boycotts going on. We're not spending in certain places. So maybe there's pressure from your kids. They want this, they want that. So many things going on. How do we manage these feelings and get through the holiday season? Because the other thing is, you still got to show up at the holiday party, at the family event. How do we manage that and still show up?
Well, thank you so much for that question, Jackie. And it really is such an important topic to discuss, especially right now. And one of the things that I will offer to people is that it is also okay for you to give yourself grace to not show up. I think a part of what adds to the stress of the holiday season is that there is this expectation that we be jolly, that we be present, that we, kind of be filled with the holiday spirit. And the truth is that a lot of people just are not feeling that right now. And so it really actually adds to your stress to kind of force yourself to show up when really you feel like you don't want to. And so I think it's okay to be honest with people, like, hey, I'm just not really feeling it this year. Can we scale down the celebrations? Can we reimagine what they look like? I think releasing yourself from some of those expectations can actually help to manage the stress.
Doctor, let me ask you about changing minds. I can tell you for decades, I've been hearing about how our community eats. And Lord knows from Thanksgiving to New Year's, we do our job as relates to eating that stuff, much of
Oh
which
my
does
God.
not sit well with us. What have you found has worked best in changing And it doesn't mean you can't have it every now and then. But if you're having it every day, if it's a normal meal as opposed to just a Thanksgiving meal or a Christmas meal, that becomes the problem.
Yeah, I do think it's important to recognize how much the food that we eat is connected to our mood. There's so much research that talks about, how that increases depression and anxiety. And we know that we feel maybe more fatigued and less energy when we're eating certain kinds of things. And you bring up a great point. It is not that we can't ever have the foods that we enjoy, but can we look at having them more in moderation and also look at the things that we can add to our activity, right? So can we add dinner and then take a walk in the park, or can we have a family dance off or something like that, so that we're also getting some physical activity involved that can help to balance out some of the food that may not be great for our waistlines.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that it's okay not to show up. I made that choice some years ago. I used to come home to Georgia from New York every year, but then I dealt with some family drama one year and I said, that's it. I'm staying in New York. And I did. And it was the best decision I ever made. And so I really want to kind of just dig into that a little bit more, because there's that guilt that can come from your family and not being there. And people have this vision of what Christmas and, what the holiday season is supposed to be. But I tell you, I put up a tree, had presents. I put a present under there for myself and I would unwrap it. Even though I bought it and wrapped it, I would wrap it and unwrap it. Would cook a great breakfast. And then I would have friends over later in the day who also didn't go home. But I just want to talk about, because Oprah just did this big show about cutting parents off, cutting kids off, all that kind of stuff. Let's talk about, at what point do we need to separate from family?
Yeah, I think it doesn't have to be. And how do we what?
And how do we do that?
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be a permanent separation, like you mentioned, right? Like you
Yeah.
decided one year that this is not what you wanted to do. So if you feel like, this year I would really rather stay home versus travel, it's okay to do that. And you mentioned guilt. And I think for a lot of people, when there is this feeling of guilt, that signals to them that they've done something wrong. But guilt doesn't necessarily mean that you've done anything wrong. It may just mean that your values are out of alignment. And so right now there may be a tension between your value to prioritize your peace and your mental health versus what your family wants, and that is where the guilt is coming from. And so I think being able to be compassionate with yourself and say, this does not mean that I'm doing anything wrong. It just means that I am being called to need something right now that is more in line with my values, right? So maybe I do need more rest. Maybe I don't want to deal with the family drama. And I think the way to deal with that in a really healthy way is to kind of get in front of the issues, right? So don't just wait until Christmas Eve and then decide to call people and tell them you're not coming. Go ahead and make a plan for letting people know if you're not going to participate or if you're going to do something different, so that people can feel all of their feelings, and then you can enjoy whatever it is your plan will be.
Let me
So
go
don't
directly
just
to
not show up.
let me go to directly
Right.
to Christmas and talk about the idea of children and the pressure parents feel about providing for children at this special time. If you don't have the money, you don't have the money. If you were just laid off, you were just laid off. And pride will sometimes suggest that you do not want to go and only get something that you get from a toy drive or not. How would you tell people to handle that?
Yeah, I think that really comes down to, depending on the age of your kids, being honest with them, right? Especially if Christmas is going to look very different than maybe it has in the past because economics have changed. Maybe your job situation has changed. And to let kids know, like, this is not a demonstration of how much I love you. Finances look very different. And so I think sometimes kids can have different conversations maybe than we expect, but I think being honest actually goes a very long way. And this could also be a really cool opportunity to think about some new family traditions that you may be able to create together, right? So instead of exchanging a bunch of gifts, can you do something like volunteering in your neighborhood? Does it look like writing each other letters or doing some other new thing? I think giving yourself permission and including the kids in developing new traditions can actually be something that, you may look forward to even years when finances improve.
Yeah. Dr. Joy, how do we know when sadness is actually more than that, that it's depression, and that it's not just a situational depression, but we're at the point where we need to be talking to someone professional?
So I actually think it is okay to talk to somebody professionally even before you get to that point, and I think that that actually could go a very long way, right? I heard you kind of teasing Ed about it, but I think that it is okay to talk to somebody even if we are not at the point of feeling like we are significantly depressed. But definitely, if you get to the place where you are noticing that you are not as interested in the things that you used to be interested in, maybe there is more tardiness at work or just not showing up, feeling like you can't even go in. If you find yourself more irritable, if you are sleeping more or less than you typically do, or eating more or less, those are definitely some signs that this may have risen to a clinical level and you may want to seek some support from somewhere else.
What do you tell men particularly
Oof.
who don't want to go talk to somebody else, who do still see that as a sign of weakness, who don't feel that they can go to their wife or their children? Have you been able to have those discussions, and what seems best to work?
Yeah, I mean, I think unfortunately there is still a lot of stigma related to talking with a therapist, especially for Black men. And there are lots of reasons why that is, right? Like we know historically that has not been safe. And so I think we have to start by normalizing people's fears about talking to someone, but also show them how it has maybe improved our own lives. And so I'm so excited that so many of my Black male colleagues who are therapists are so open in talking about their own mental health challenges, talking about their experiences with therapy, creating programs for men to come together. And I think the more that we talk about and show examples of people who have talked to a therapist and had good experiences, I think that that really opens the doors for more people to seek services.
Well, one of the things that I know myself and a lot of people that I'm friends with have struggled with, if you want a Black therapist or you want a Black woman therapist, is finding someone. And I know you offer resources for that. Tell us, what we can find with therapy for Black girls when it comes to finding a therapist.
Yes, we have created a therapist directory because we've heard the same, Jackie, right? Like, I really want to find a Black woman therapist, but I don't know where. So we have over 5,000 therapists listed in our directory at therapyforblackgirls.com, where people can search and find a therapist who is in their area. And while, of course, our website is called Therapy for Black Girls, most of the therapists in our directory also see people who are not Black women and girls. So if there are other people who would like to see one of the therapists listed there, they can also use those services. We've also created a guide to getting started with therapy, because if you are not sure what this process looks like, it may be very unfamiliar. And so if you go to therapyforblackgirls.com/GTGS, you can download a free guide that helps you understand what kinds of questions you want to ask the therapist, how do you keep track of how you feel about them, and really helps to guide you through that process.
And while we wait for Ed to return, let me ask you this. A lot of people feel this pressure, Dr. Joy, that as they're ending this year, they got to prepare for next year and get off it's got to be great. New year, new you, everything.
Yeah.
January is that month, right? Where we're doing everything. How do we manage
Mhm.
that pressure that we put on ourselves to just run out the gate, starting January 1st?
Yeah, I think that again, this is a situation where we have to release ourselves from this expectation that it is a new year, new me. Because does it really need to be a new year, you every year, or can
Right.
you just be 1% better, right? So I think that those are great marketing and branding kinds of messages, but in reality, they can do a number on our psyche and on our confidence and on our mental health. And so, if all you can do is start the new year in one piece, I think that we can call that a success, especially after the very rough year many of us have had in 2025.
Yeah, because people are ordering planners,
Yes.
calendars, doing all the things. They're about to join gyms.
Hmm.
It's so much pressure with that. But if it's something that you could
Yeah.
just, like you said, you don't have to just do everything in January. You can spread it out throughout the year. And like you said, it doesn't have
Right.
to be everything. It just be one little thing you change. I even
Hmm.
think when it comes to New Year's resolutions, somebody said, I found my therapist on Therapy for Black Girls. I
Oh,
love
yay.
But I was saying, with New Year's resolutions as well, people come up with this laundry list of things. And it's just like, I love how you said 1%. It could just be one thing that you plan on changing.
Right, right. And by all means, if you are somebody who has always been a planner person and this is like your thing and it doesn't feel like pressure to you, then definitely continue with it. But I think we are specifically talking to the people who feel the pressure and it doesn't actually feel aligned, or you feel like you are, kind of stretching yourself even more thin to do what you think you're supposed to be doing as opposed to just existing.
Yeah. I don't know if Ed is fully back or if he's frozen. He might be frozen, but I want to ask you this because, Ed talked about Black men, but let's talk about other people in our lives, friends, parents, siblings, who we see may need therapy, right? In our non-expert opinion. How do we have that conversation if you do see that someone is displaying troubling traits and you want to have that conversation to suggest that they get into therapy? Because it's a tough one. I've had it.
Yeah, that can be. Yeah, it can be a difficult conversation. And I think a good place to start is to just call attention to the behavior that you're noticing. So saying something like, "Hey, I noticed that you haven't shown up for book club the past couple of weeks, and I know you're usually really into it. I just want to check in. Is everything okay?" Right? Like an invitation like that is a gentle invitation into a conversation as opposed to, "Hey, I think you're depressed. You need to talk to somebody." Like the approach is very different. And so I think calling attention to the behavior and offering them the opportunity to talk and to be there to actually listen. You don't want to do this when you're kind of rushing past someone. Actually taking time to listen could actually allow them to talk about what's going on. I also think that making the offer to find them a therapist can go a really long way because that process can be really difficult and overwhelming. And so for somebody who's already struggling with anxiety or depression, if you do a little bit of that legwork and homework for them, that can actually help them to, be more motivated and to start the process of talking with someone.
Mhm. Well, I see Dale Hughley is on the screen, but he's gone. I said maybe he wants to get in on the therapy conversation. While we are waiting for Ed, I'm gonna take advantage of having you here because I love you, Dr. Dre. I'm gonna keep asking you questions. So let's talk about what to look for in a therapist because not all therapists are created equal. I have had bad therapists. I've had therapists, because I've lived in different cities. I love having
Mhm.
a therapist in my life. I think it just helps me to manage the chaos that can come with so many things, professionally and personally. But how do you know that it's a good fit? Should you look for?
Yeah. Yeah, so I think, before you start the process, I think you can make a dream list, so to speak, of like, who do I think I would feel really comfortable talking to? So that may be another Black woman, that may be a Black man, that may be somebody who's not Black at all. Like when you think about, okay, who is the person I feel like I could get comfortable with sharing some things that maybe I haven't even shared before? What do you think that person looks like? And then go about trying to find that. But I tell people to also be open to the idea that your perfect match of a therapist could come in a package that looks completely different than what you imagined. So I also think it's really important to look at, does this person have specialty in the thing that I'm coming in for? So you may follow a therapist online and think, oh, they have a great personality. I think I'd really like to work with them. But if they've not actually been trained and have a specialization in the thing you're coming in for, it may not actually work. And it's not because they're not a good therapist. They may just not be the good therapist for you. So I think it's also important to be open to the idea that you may have to work with a couple of different therapists before you find the one who's going to be a good match for you. But I think it's important to know that just because you don't have a great experience, it doesn't mean that therapy won't work at all. It just means that you may have to look and kind of go call some more numbers before you find the person that is going to be a good fit for you.
Okay. One of my favorite people on the planet, Dr. Joy Harden. Bradford Therapy for Black Girls. Tell us again where we can go and just find you.
So you can find me at Hello Dr. Joy across the internet, and then you can go to therapyforblackgirls.com to take advantage of all the resources we have there.
Okay, thank you. This is such an important conversation, particularly at this time of year, but always mental health and wellness is an important thing to discuss. So thank you, Dr. Joy.
Thank you, Jackie.
Okay. I'll talk to you soon. She'll be on my show in January. Now, I do not know if Ed is coming back, if D.L. Hughley is going to join me here on the screen. We're going to do, and there is D.L. Hughley. Hi, D.L. How are you? And then he's not there. Oh boy, we are having so many technical difficulties. You said, DL, can you hear me? DL? I don't think he can hear me. Okay, so let's take DL and put him backstage while we work on that audio situation, and let's see if we can get him back or Ed back before the end of the year, before the end of the show, or the end of the year, whichever comes first. So I hope you all enjoyed that segment with Dr. Joy, and that you will go to her website, give her a follow, listen to her podcast. She has such great information that she gives when it comes to mental health and wellness. And you guys, I don't think that Ed is going to make it back. He was having some technical difficulties throughout the day and throughout the show. And I don't think that DL is going to join us. So I'm going to wrap things up right here. We appreciate you all tuning into the Signal Live. And the show will be back next Thursday with 2 more guest co-hosts. Every Thursday, the Signal Live comes to you here on YouTube. Please tell your friends what they're doing here with State of the People is very important work. So please support that by tuning into this show. Oh, and they are telling me that this is the last show of the season. So I guess we'll be back in January with more of Signal Live.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Ed Gordon. Normally during our roundtable, we tackle a number of issues that are in the news, but tonight we thought we'd look at one topic, the relationship between men and women. The battle of the sexes is never ending. Men see things one way, women another. Do we really know each other? And more importantly, and more to the point, will we ever? Experts say communication is key.
Welcome back, everyone. An effort is underway to repeal a set of New York drug laws that disproportionately target African Americans. Now, some of the biggest names in hip-hop are joining the fight to get these laws taken off.
Don't want to miss it, so keep it right here. For the BET Nightly News, I'm Jacque Reid. Good night, everybody.
Hey, good day. I'm Frederick D. Haynes III of Friendship West Baptist Church in Dallas, Texas. And today, as we continue to be inspired in spite of the depressing political context we find ourselves in, don't forget the wisdom of the Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr. On one occasion, according to Rodney Ellis there in Houston in Harris County, he was complaining about all of the attacks that he was experiencing. And that's when Reverend Jackson responded to him. You got to recognize, evidently, you have the ball. They only try to tackle the one who has the ball. They only try to bring down the one who has the ball. If no one's trying to tackle you, then evidently you must have fumbled the ball somewhere. Listen, since January of this year, we have witnessed executive disorders that have targeted us to the tune of over 300,000 black women losing their jobs. To this day, over 500,000 black people who were working last year at this time aren't working right now. Evidently, we have the ball. They've come for us. They've tried to tackle us because we have the ball, trying to destroy DEI, trying to destroy and wage war on wokeness because they recognize that we've got the ball.